Good morning. Merry 7th day of Christmas. Happy New Year's Eve. What else am I forgetting? There's a lot going on right now. It's the last day of 2023. We are about to change calendars, saying goodbye to the solar year and welcome in a new one. And hopefully you all have lots of fun plans in mind, right? Lots of fun celebrations, staying up till midnight. I want to go to bed. I want to go to bed. It's been a long, festive season. Well, as I was preparing for today's sermon, usually most sermons take a couple of tries before you kind of find that groove, find that path that seems to say, kind of pull the preacher to say, this is what I feel God's people need to hear today. Specifically, God's people here at Good Sam. And I went down several roads before I kind of finally realized I'm kind of banging my head against the wall here. And I'm going to blame John. I'm going to blame John. Because ultimately, nothing I could ever say to you today, or in 100 years of preparing a sermon on this, could add to what John has just told us, what John has just proclaimed. Nothing I could say could illuminate some part to say, well, yeah, what John really could have said here, or I think he was trying to say here, there's no need to be presumptuous. There's nothing I could ever add, or I would say any preacher could add to improve upon John's proclaiming of the gospel, of the good news in this prologue. In fact, as much of us know, call me Ishmael, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times, as many of those classic opening lines in literature that we all know and love, this, I would argue, is the most important and should be the most famous opening line of any book or document. And it bears special meaning for us today because, as I said earlier, here we are kind of on the cusp, in this liminal space, on the threshold of walking out of 2023 into 2024, but also poised in the middle of Christmas. We've already celebrated the birth of the Christ child. We have celebrated with the Holy Family, and we have adored with the shepherds and shouted hosannas with the angels. And we know another group of visitors are on their way, coming from the east, the three wise men, right? And we'll celebrate their arrival at the Epiphany. So we're kind of in the middle of all of these things that are going on. And that's sort of on the big scale. You personally probably have a lot going on. Last minute charitable gifts, especially to Good Sam, right? Cal did not ask me to put that in there, by the way. Last minute plans for getting together with friends. Looking ahead, what does the new year hold? What things do I want to continue? What things do I want to change? Some of those things are full of hope and promise. And some things about this time of year bring up a lot of fears and anxieties. I don't know if I'll be able to do that this year. I'm worried about my health. I'm worried about the health of a loved one. I'm worried about my finances. I'm worried about this or that. I'm worried about the world. Every time I open the internet or my phone or turn on the TV or crack open the newspaper, it's full of stories that can cause us to dread. And so as we're at this moment of pregnant pause, really, we're waiting for those minutes, hours, minutes, and seconds to tick down and flip the symbolic calendar. I want to just pause for a minute and reflect on one word in particular from today's gospel, and it's the word beginning. We're about to begin a new year. The word beginning that John uses, arche, means beginning. It's also the same word that the Greek uses in the Hebrew Bible in the beginning of Genesis, in the beginning. John is deliberately drawing a parallel there. But in the Greek, it also has a bunch of other meanings. I had to write it down because I couldn't remember. Beginning, origin, cause, motive. Okay, all those kind of, they fit together. Leadership, power, rule, magistrate, government, empire, monarchy, oligarchy, anarchy, right? That arche. I find it fascinating that a word that means beginning also has that connotation, also has that definition, if we were to use it in a different sense. And for us, I think that's important today, in this moment. It might not mean the same thing for us in a week or two, when we're already in the new year and we've hit the ground running, but right now, today, in this moment, with all gestures to the room, all that's going on, and also all that's going on closer to home, for me and for you. It's important for us to remember that from before time began, in the beginning, Christ was also ruling. Christ was also reigning. To me, that matters. Because when I find myself despairing a little bit, when things aren't under control in my own life, when things aren't falling into place in a peaceful way in the world, it's important to remember that from before the first humans got together and started doing this thing called civilization together, Christ reigned. And that reign was peace. The Prince of Peace reigned from before time, was in charge and reigned from before time. We need to remember that fact and hold on to it. Because in this day and age, it seems like the powers and principalities, not only of governments, but also the dominion of our own personal demons and addictions that seem to have a hold on us and a grip that we just can't seem to shake, and seem to have, they do have real consequences. If we focus too much on that, we tend to give them more power than they actually have. When if we would just remember the opening words of John, in the beginning, the Word was with God, the Word was God. This Prince of Peace that shines a light in the world, that casts out all darkness, and is a light for all people. You and I belong to this Prince of Peace. We have proclaimed his birth. We proclaim his resurrection in our lives daily, especially when we come to the altar. We belong to this Prince of Peace, first and foremost, who has been reigning from before time and reigns today and will reign long after you and I are gone. Christ reigns. And that central fact should give us hope. I want to leave you with some words from, I have it in my hand. Leave you with some words from my favorite Archbishop of Canterbury. And you can laugh at me, my wife certainly does. I have a favorite Archbishop of Canterbury. Full-on nerd here. Who was preaching to a group of bishops at the Lambeth Conference over in England back in 1930. William Temple, who at the time was not Archbishop, he was, I think, Bishop of Manchester, an industrial town. And he would go on to become Archbishop during World War II, a time when things were pretty grim and bleak. And it was easy to despair then as well. Here in 1930, though, he was preaching to a group of bishops, and I gather, I need to find the context of the conference, but I gather from the words of this sermon that I'm going to quote, there was contention, there was division, there was tussling. Sound familiar? Bishop Temple preached, "While we deliberate, Christ reigns. When we decide, Christ reigns. When we decide foolishly, Christ reigns. When we serve him in humble loyalty, Christ reigns. When we serve him self-assertively, Christ reigns. When we rebel and seek to withhold our service, Christ reigns. The Alpha and the Omega, which is and which was and which is to come, the Almighty reigns. We will mess up. We'll get some things right. We will do what we've always done as humans in 2024. We will love one another. We will hurt one another. Through it all, Christ reigns. That's not to say that we can just throw up our hands and say, well, Jesus, take the wheel, I can do what I want. But it is an open invitation to remember whom we serve, who we belong to, who claims our loyalty, who claims our service, our faithful, humble service. And I love that Freddie chose that hymn because that's exactly what William Temple was quoting. Christ who reigns always. Who do we belong to? Who do we follow? Who gives us hope? We belong to this Prince of Peace. Amen.